Hi, it's Greg Chambers. Thanks for attending this. I'm going to be on here for just a second so you can see me on the screen right there in front of myself. Just to let you know that I was live when I recorded this, but I'm going to minimize this and we're going to look at slides from here on out because it's a lot more interesting than looking at me. So let me pop this off and then let's jump into our presentation. Today, I want to talk about some information work with law firms, and in the course of doing this, we've uncovered, maybe is a better way of saying it, a way to increase the value of law firms using FIT. And FIT is a framework I use for business growth. And inside of doing this business growth for some law firms, we've been able to get more value for the firm at exit. So let's jump into this. The first concept that you need to be aware of is that works for us is perception, right? Value and perception. And to illustrate this, I just want to use this pack of gum. So what is a pack of gum worth? For most of us, right, if I don't have any gum or if I just don't really like gum, it's not worth anything. If I buy it in bulk, I might be able to get it down as low as $1.57 a pack. I actually looked that up on Amazon. $2 is pretty common for a pack of gum. Now let's change the scenario a little bit from just do you want this pack of gum to we're out on a date with a pretty girl. So we're having a nice dinner, seaside. It looks like she's into us. Something good may happen. Now, what is that gum worth? It still may not be worth much more than $1.50 or $2, but maybe $2, $3, it'd be nice to have as a backup in my back pocket, because my biggest fear is this. The thing we order is just the chef went crazy, loaded up tons of garlic into the food. And then as dates sometimes do, it's going really well. And there's an opportunity for us to maybe move in and get a goodbye kiss. If that's the case, right then, like to that guy right there, what is a pack of gum worth, knowing that he's got some raunchy garlic breath? Maybe $5, $10? My point is that what changed from the pack of gum? If you go to this original pack of gum, all the way over to this pack of gum, what's changed? And the only thing that's changed is perception. So working with that concept, that value is in the eye of the beholder, we're going to talk about law firm value. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through this whole big idea. And this big idea, we'll break it down so that you can actually read it. But it's all about how are law firms valued and where do they come from? But before we go into what a firm is and how to increase the value, let's talk about who this is for and who it's not for. If you're a law firm, if you are attracted to this idea that I'm just trying to maximize the cash that I pull out of this, right? I provide a service and I'm maximizing my income versus trying to build an asset, right? Which is I'm trying to build my law firm into an asset of something that I can grow. Maximizing cash is neither one of these is better than the other one. But if you're out to maximize the cash that comes through your law firm, right? I'm a solo practice. I'm working out of my home office, right? I'm trying to minimize expenses as much as possible and maximize the dollar flow that comes through my business. This is really not for you today. And I have a lot of opinions on this because this is actually the way that I've had to make this decision myself for my consulting practice. But if we're after growing your asset, like I was just talking to a guy this morning and he said that right now the best place for entrepreneurs to be putting their money is inside their firms, because it can possibly, you can get a 20 to 25% return on your investment, whereas the market is just not giving that without some unreasonable risk. So you should be putting that into it. This is what we're going to be talking about today. And what you're going to walk out with, if this is still you, is we're going to talk about these just three real big ideas. One is how law firms are valued. And if you're familiar with this, it'll be a review. If you haven't really thought about this exactly, it should be eye-opening. We're going to talk about how to increase that value, and then I'm going to give you an example that I just bumped into. So let's talk about first how firms are valued. Three main components inside of a firm value. So, and this is talking to anybody, business valuation consultant, CPAs, right? If you were buying into a firm, they would say, well, let's take a look at what can we, let's look at the revenue. That's one of the things we're going to look at when we're valuing the firm. We're going to look at any assets, right? Do they have a building? Do they have, everything all the way down to furniture? Those are assets, and those are worth something. And then goodwill. So everything gets, I say everything. There's a lot of business value that gets lumped into goodwill, and we're going to end up talking a little bit about that. Multiples today range anywhere from 0.5 to 1.5 of a combination of what revenue, assets, and goodwill is, right? So let's say that all adds up to be $1 million. The firm value may be placed anywhere from $500,000 to $1.5 million, just based on perception. So the question you should be asking is the one that I was asking, which is, well, what goes into that? How do I get closer to 1.5 than I do 2.5? And we're going to talk about that a little bit, because once we have that, we can actually, right, we can set about to increase the things that make us more valuable. We can decrease the things that are going to make our firm less valuable. So revenue obviously is a big driver, and so that we'd love to increase, right? The higher the revenue that your firm produces, the more valuable your firm is. And that just stands to reason, right? If you're doing $10 million a year in billings versus $100 million in billings, those are two different values. The cost of sales, right, which is the cost to generate that revenue, if you can bring that down, so firm reputation, referrals, type of business that you do, if you can drive that cost down while driving revenue up, right, doing higher value work, that's going to be something that increases your firm value. Assets are harder because there's really no, they are what they are, right? And for the most part, we just kind of agree on them. If I had to go out and buy these today, right? If I had to go buy a new chair today, how much would I spend? And your chair is 10 years old in the conference room, what's it worth? That is, I don't know that we're necessarily going to be able to change that, and I'm not interested in changing that. But I am interested in learning more about this bottom one, goodwill, because goodwill, as defined by business valuation, is just that intangible part of what makes a business worth more to somebody worth more to one person than another. And what I'm going to talk about is we're going to impact goodwill via a lead generation process. And this works for whether it's a defense firm or a personal injury firm. What I'm going to describe is at a high level. It's a high level process, but it is going to go into this bucket that we're going to label as goodwill. So let's jump into this lead generation process. The three main components of your lead generation process starts with vision. And what I mean by that is beginning with the end in mind, right? If you go all the way back to the first question I asked you, what is it that you're hoping to get out of this firm? What is it that you hope to get out of this business? It's been proved time and time again, and actually I just read this thing. I'm looking for it because I wrote it down, I put it around here, but 400% was the average value increase when people were working towards a vision, when there was a set outcome that they were after. And in the case of building a firm on purpose, the value of a firm on purpose, this would be the same thing. So that's what I mean by vision. And as far as what do you do to impact that is that's strategy, right? That's what we're doing right here. If we set out with a concept in mind and then we work towards improving it, we have a better chance of increasing our firm value than if we don't. And in terms of a lead generation process, what I'm referring to specifically is a way to cost effectively generate leads for the firm, because business development tends to be the one thing that most law firms struggle with in some way, shape, or form, right? You guys are super smart. You know your work inside and out, but when it comes to going out and finding new business, it's a challenge. So if you have a process in mind, that makes your firm more valuable than another firm. this system, this lead generation system that we put in, needs to be based on strengths. And when I talk about strengths, I'm referring to one thing in particular, which is self-identified character strengths. And self-identified character strengths are those things like the VIA a test for character strengths. Gallup puts out a similar strengths. I'm here in Omaha, Nebraska, and Gallup is headquartered here, so everybody's familiar with Gallup. But what it is it's a way for your firm, the people in your firm, to identify what it is that they feel most comfortable, right? That their character strengths that they feel most comfortable using, and then taking those strengths and applying them to lead generation. So what we found in the firm that I was just working with is that if you could, there's 12 people in the firm, if we could get everybody working on finding new business in addition to the two principals who are out finding new business, you're going to generate more new opportunities. That just stands to reason. The hardest part, though, is getting the other 10 people on board because they don't think that that's their role. So we put together a system that is based on utilizing their strengths. So if you have somebody who has humor, for instance, as a high strength, their self-perceived strength is that they like to use humor in doing whatever it is they do. Can we get them to share some of the stories that our firm is producing and do it in a humorous way that helps expand the reach of the message? It's an incredibly powerful technique, and coupled with a strong vision of what we're trying to accomplish, right? They know why it is that we're trying to get this done, and they're able to use their strengths day in, day out to help us realize that vision. What you find is people just enjoy the work that they're doing more. So that's the second thing I want you to think about. And the last thing is locking it in with technology. And in this lead generation process, knowing what it is that we're after, we're trying to generate leads in a cost-effective way. We're going to utilize the entire staff by taking advantage of their self-identified strengths, right? Not strengths that we see, like, gosh, Carol seems like she's really funny. It's Carol saying, you know what, I love, being helpful. So, okay, Carol, how can we use that help? How can we use that education, your educational bent to help to help the firm accomplish what we're trying to accomplish? And once we have those things identified, then we need to plug in technology, right? Plug in the robot at that moment to make it easier for Carol to do it over and over again. So think of it this way. If Carol did it once a year and it was kind of helpful, right? And I'm talking about something basic like sharing a story on a relevant story on LinkedIn to her LinkedIn contacts, her 287 LinkedIn contacts. If she did that once a year, it's kind of effective. If we use technology so that she's able to do it 3 to 4 times a year, it's that much more effective. She gets the benefit of seeing it work and without having to think too much about it because the robot is helping her. And then that helps you tie back into your vision. So what I'm describing there is a lead generation process that can work across any particular area. I happen to be strongest in the in-person, right? I help people when they're talking to each other at networking events or serving on boards, right? A lot of it depends on when I start here with the vision and we come in and we say, this is what we're trying to do. This is how much money we have to invest in new business and that we're hoping to get it done. I usually focus right away on strengths on the principles. There are certain people who just are great networkers and are gregarious, right? They're just out and about and they love speaking. They love meeting new people. And there's other people who are very technical. But at the same time, they have a skill set that maybe can be applied to boards of directors or some other community involvement that lets them get out and demonstrate what it is they do. These things are not, there's not one set way of doing it. It's more of a process of getting it done. Let's agree upon what it is that we're trying to get done up here. Let's make sure that we're only using the things, our character strengths that we enjoy the most. And then let's apply some technology to it so that we can make sure we do it more often than not. And this is what ends up happening. When we have that, we can take that and we can say this future firm value that we're after, revenue is still going to be somewhere between 0.5, 1.0, and 1.5. But here's the thing with our revenue, right, is we've taken it and we've actually, by generating more leads, we're increasing the cash inside the business. So if we can generate leads in a real cost-effective way, we will actually drive that top line number. And the cost-effective way is what I talked about down here, is doing it while also decreasing that cost of sales. So if we can push this number up, even if we're still operating at a 0.5 multiple as what the business is worth, 2 million in revenue is worth more than 1 million. So that's one way that we're driving that up. Assets, again, I don't know that we can change that. What it's worth is what it's worth. But by putting a marker on here, by actually adding something in like a lead generation process, brand value, the ability to consistently generate revenue, right? This is the big question. If anybody's trying to value your business, is they're like, man, I know that it's been $100,000 every year for the last 5 years, but if I buy into this, if I become a partner or if I'm actually taking over the firm, what's the guarantee that I'm going to be able to continue that? If I'm real confident that, hey, not only am I going to be able to continue it, but I'm going to be able to grow it, I may be more towards 1.5. If I'm like, if Greg Chambers leaves, I don't know where the revenue comes from. That's more like 0.5, if not 0.25, right? So the firm will be worth more by generating cash. This lead generation process is down here in the Goodwill part. This is what makes everybody feel better about what we're buying into, right? And this is what we're buying into. So by working with those things together, that's how you can get multiples of your business that are 1.5 to 2.5. And we've actually seen this happen. And here's an example. So a firm just working with 3-year average revenue, $380,000, right? So this is reportable revenue that everybody agrees upon, audited financials. Yes, for these two partners, this is consistent, countable revenue. $65,000 in assets on hand and Goodwill at $100,000. The Goodwill at that point is really just kind of being measured on how hard is this for me to do by myself, right? So if we say this is the direction that this firm was headed to before they had a partial exit opportunity, revenue was unsteady, but relatively consistent. But that's why we didn't get the full value of the revenue when we're trying to value the business. And there's no story behind the asset valuation, right? There's nothing that's going to change there. But in Goodwill, we could say, gosh, this is what we think the firm is worth and what we're there. But the advisors, right, the future partner, the bank that we're talking to, or we're going to have to get the money to buy into the business, the financial advisors who are saying, why don't you what would happen if you just did this yourself? If we say that this firm is worth $400,000, is that a good deal for you when you're buying into it? This is the direction that the firm was headed. And when I say we stumbled on this, we did stumble on it because this was not the intent when we first started, right? So we weren't after, oh, how do we change this, Greg? We were after, how do we change this? How do we just upload that or get that revenue number up? So what ended up happening over the last 3 years is revenue increased and became much steadier. Assets have not changed, but the Goodwill has inside that business. So if you take the 3-year investment, so $60,000 a year that went into building lead generation, right? That went into buying more business, gave an average of $100,000 a year, right? So $300,000 in new revenue. And that did two things for us. One is it increased the multiplier for the revenue as far as what the business is worth. The questions were no longer, is that guaranteed to come in? You could actually point back to it and say, you know what, this is where that revenue comes from, and this is what we expect. We already know what the lever is. We know how much we're paying for a phone inquiry. We know how much we're paying for an actual new client. Assets, again, we didn't argue about, but then Goodwill goes up tremendously because this becomes one of those things where, are you going to recreate this? Are you going to reinvest in learning this process? It wasn't just that the money that was here, but it was the lessons that were learned. Overall, what we saw was a nearly $300,000 increased value in the asset, which is the firm. The partner was a lot more comfortable with buying into it. The bankers were a lot more comfortable with lending into it, and financial advisors had a hard time picking things apart partially because we had a story, right? If there was no story behind this asset valuation, down here we had a tremendous story behind what was going on. So that's I mean, obviously these aren't audited financials, and a lot of this is anecdotal, but this is actually what has happened. So the good news is it's replicable, right? We weren't looking for this added asset value when we started. You, on the other hand, you can go about doing it right away, right? No matter who it is that you go use to help build this lead generation machine to increase the value of your firm, you can do it starting today. Just go out and start talking to people about lead generation. The principles of how we generated those leads, that followed best practices from other industries, right? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a content expert when it comes to the law, but when it comes to how people make decisions about how to choose lawyers, that's decision making, and I am pretty good at that. So we used those best practices for how people make decisions in other industries and use that to drive new leads in a cost-effective way to this business and in a replicable way. And looking back, not to read this to you because you can read it yourself, but we could have done a lot more knowing what we know today. If we knew that this exit was going to be happening, right? It's the health of a partner thing that changed things. But if we knew we were building this, we could have done a better job. And so that's why I'm giving this. I'm giving it to myself, but I'm giving it to you so that you can run with it. Since you signed up for this, what you're going to get is in the next 12 to 24 hours, just depending on how that cycle is with the email, is an opportunity to subscribe to my newsletter, because I have ideas related to fit, which is actually what drove this lead generation process. I've got those things that come out on a weekly basis. It takes 5 minutes to read, and it has a little bit on just a very human way to generate new business that works for you, right? So ideas that you can live with, and since you can live with them, you actually do them. I'll send you a copy of my booklet, Amalgamate. It'll just come via email, but it's a little booklet that I do that is, again, biannual, but it comes with a dozen ideas that you can use inside your business. Some of them are directly applicable. Some of them you might need to set aside and figure out, oh, how in the world can I use that? But most of my clients find it pretty valuable. And you're going to get a link to this quick firm value assessment. And it is a series of questions where you can ask yourself, as of today, what are you doing and how are you set up to take advantage of this concept that we're just putting in front of you. So I've also got an article that I'm going to include a link to, which is an article on perception and value. I think my gum example is pretty good, but I've also got another example from a business that I used to be involved in. It's Hawaiian shirts, so it's pretty great. The last thing you can do, obviously, as I give this away, that I'm hoping that a few of you are interested in getting results faster. So to do that, let's just schedule a call, and I am going to offer my time to you. So if you found this, chances are it's because we targeted you and then we tried to give this to you. If you want to learn more and apply it directly to your firm, let's schedule 30 minutes, just like you would have a client, you would share some time with them. I can do the same with you and apply it directly to what I see inside of your niche and your firm and the area that you work in. And to do that, I'll have you fill out an assessment so that we can make the call as productive as possible. And there's no charge, right? It's 100% focused on applying it to you and your market. So that's it. I told you it would be short. Once again, Greg Chambers. I call myself El Presidente because I used to run a Hawaiian, a tropical shirt firm. I used to be the Mad Gringo, but no longer. Now I am Chambers Pivot Industries, and for the last half decade or so, and I'm ready to help you. So thanks for your time. I made it nice and short, and we will talk soon. Goodbye.